Step 3 is helping people see options. Step 3 is focused on the first workshop, and in that workshop we present educational materials and have interactive exercises that help address people's fears and concerns about higher density and affordable housing. Sometimes those workshops and materials are specially developed for that particular community, and sometimes we tailor existing materials to their specific concerns.
Because we're starting off with what are the health issues, and then we're going to identify what's already positive in the neighborhood.
The first workshop is sometimes a workshop and sometimes a more participatory event. And what it's trying to do is help people understand where their community is. Sometimes we're helping provide information that puts their community in a context or shows them options about what kinds of developments are possible.
It really gives a neighborhood a sense of citywide goals. Instead of focusing in on their own territory, it broadens their perspective so they understand what's important to the city and the greater community. And that, again, is a true benefit for the city to have neighborhoods on board with the city vision and the city goals and looking beyond their boundaries.
So really what the first one is trying to do is give people information and also give them a chance to start to express their opinions about what kind of development they'd like to have happen.
To find some way for pedestrians and bicyclists to feel that those two places are connected.
For 20, 30 or 40 years, affordable housing design has been moving forward. It's moved forward so far that much recent affordable housing is invisible because it's attractive, it fits in its neighborhood, it actually improves neighborhoods. And one of the things that happens in workshops is people look at the photographs and they say, I never thought that was affordable housing. You've got to be joking. I thought that was really expensive. And it's a huge realization for people that affordable housing comes in lots of different sizes and shapes. In thinking about the imagery we produce, we've spent a lot of time finding local examples of well-loved places. We've prepared educational materials about a variety of topics, and they really respond to questions we've received. We use the educational materials in a lot of different parts of the Corridor Housing Initiative process. At the first workshop, we use them to illustrate different development types. In the block exercise, sketches point at different styles to ask people if that's the style they'd like for their design. And at the final workshop, when people are hearing from developers, we use those materials to show what the developer's work could look like. Step 4 is preparing for the block exercise. It's a whole step in itself because it requires several components. First, the Community Steering Committee needs to figure out which sites they would like to focus on. In addition, we need to prepare the financial analyses to make sure we have viable options so the block exercise will work. And finally, we need to prepare for the design part of the block exercise, to prepare perspective grids to sketch over and to make sure we are ready to answer design questions.
In the initial stage of the process, the site selection is a really critical piece where you're really identifying which sites are going to be utilized for the block exercise. Some of the factors that play into those decisions regard the size, whether it's a catalyst site, if it's located in an area that is highly visible or can be seen as a place to leverage a new type of development is another key factor. And third, what is the ownership status? Is this a site that's ready to move? Is the property owner ready to sell or has interest in further development? Or is there kind of an opportunity at hand?
Prior to the block exercise, the development comes up with a couple base scenarios for the site so that it gives us a starting point for coming up with some of our development scenarios. So the participants have this in front of them to start to give them a feel for how many units they're trying to aim for. The sheet outlines the number of total units, the mix of affordable and market rate units, the amount of green space, the amount of parking, if commercial square footage was included. And then the bottom line is that it lets you know if there's a surplus or a deficit. And more often there is a deficit.
The ideal person to run numbers for the CHI block exercise process would be someone who is a developer. There are a lot of people who have facility with spreadsheets, but what's important is that they understand how the form of development, of a particular development or a different development, actually fits with the numbers and vice versa. So a developer finance person is the best person to do this kind of work. And the other ingredient that needs to be a part of it is someone who has a true desire to improve the community, because then in the end the product will be a better product.
In order to run the block exercise, you really need a coordinator, someone who's going to pull all the details together to make sure everything's in line and it's happening when it needs to happen, and someone who's the point person for all of the people that are going to be involved, the person who really gives out the information and the person who people can check in with. There's a real social aspect to the block exercise, so you have to think about what really works well for your community. Maybe it's a church basement, maybe it's the community center, but maybe you're having a festival in the summer and you can just throw up a tent and have tables there where people are already coming to attend the festival, and then they can go over to the block exercise as well. So really you have to think about what would work well for your community. There's no one way to do it. In order to illustrate the site, we use aerial photographs or digital orthophotos. And these are maps that we can scale up or down to any size. And what we use for the block exercise is 1 inch equals 20 feet. So they're a representation of the site that is scaled, and we print them in order to be used as the base map for the block exercise. One of the steps in preparing for the block exercise is to create grids, which are the base for the perspective drawings that the sketchers do during the block exercise. Before you go out and photograph the site, it's important to determine what are the key views that you're going to want to capture during the sketching. The photos are then stitched together on the computer to create panoramic views.
I started with focusing on this side. The same car is still there, so I want to use that in reference to put this one next to it. Right now I'm trying to match this tree. Okay, now we have the whole corner, and that's the image that they use to make the sketch out of. After this, we draw a grid on top of it to apply perspective.
And it's really important to have these grids because the sketchers are often coming into the block exercise without being very familiar with the site. So this gives them a quick point of reference to draw the building in. And within 10 to 15 minutes, they can have a fairly accurate building drawn into scale. In order to construct the blocks, we use 1/2 inch medium density fiberboard because these allow the blocks to be created at 1 inch equals 20 feet very efficiently. The blocks are cut in different sizes to represent different housing types, and they typically are 1 to 2 stories. They can be put together in many different configurations, but our base is 1 to 2 stories, and the block tops that have the floor plans are available on the web. The basic unit types available are apartment and row house, and those are available in different configurations. For example, a 2-unit apartment or a 4-unit apartment, or a single row house or multiple row houses. The block exercise is a really intense process, and they're typically held in the evening. So that means food is really important. People need caffeine, they need sugar, they really need some fuel to keep them going during the whole 2 hours.